Sorry guys, the prep for your comic is not over quite yet. You don't get to start making the actual pages, but thumbnails are the first step from turning your script into an actual comic page. So that's cool, right? That's exciting. Okay, so if you've never heard of thumbnail sketches, they are a mini version of your final piece. So in this case, your comic pages. They're usually very roughly sketched, and they're usually very small. Like if I'm drawing them in a sketchbook, they might just be like a couple inches by a couple inches. Like they're really tiny little sketches. And lots of artists will do this for illustrations. I do it for all my comics and all my major illustrations. You might have also heard thumbnails called storyboards. It's the same idea. Thumbnails are super useful because you can try out different layouts for your page without committing hours of time to making the page. So instead of, working on that comic page, penciling it, inking it, coloring it, and then discovering that you don't like the layout or there's a problem with it, that sucks. You don't want to be in that position. So instead of making a full comic page, penciling it and inking it and coloring it, and then discovering at the very end that there's a problem with the layout or the panels look bad or something like that, you can learn all of this by just doing a 10 to 20 minute sketch, and you can check to make sure you have the layout that you want and you're good and you saved yourself so much time. So make sure you do your thumbnails. And I guess here are some things to keep in mind when you are thumbnailing your pages. Number one, very important step, make sure that you're looking at your script when you're working on your thumbnails. This may seem obvious because if you're turning your script into comic pages, you probably want your script there. But, you might be tempted if you're like, you've written your own script and you know what you're talking about, or you have like this really cool idea. Don't get me wrong, it's totally fine to do an initial idea without looking at your script. But having your script open, you can look at what all the dialogue is, what all the descriptions are. If you're not looking at it, you might forget something like an important element. And it really just keeps you grounded to your story, and it gives you a good sense of what you're trying to put on the page. You can also, if you have your script open, you can look at what's coming up on future pages and plan for that. Number two, what I like to do is I set up all of my thumbnails on a single page. So I work digitally, so it's usually like a single canvas or a single file. Lay out all your pages as they will be laid out in a book, or, if you're using a different format online, lay them out the way they will be displayed online. So for example, if you're making it a book, then you'll want to set it up so it's facing pages beside each other. And the reason it's important to do them all on one page together and set them up as you would when you're gonna print them or whatever, you can look at everything all at once, and you can get a really quick overview of how everything is going to look. For example, if you're doing the book format and you have all your facing pages, you can double check that none of your pages that are side by side have similar panels. You don't want things to get too repetitive. You can avoid doing the same panel layout over and over again. And it just gives you a really good general overview of what your comic is going to look like, especially when you have all of your thumbnails filled out. I usually start by putting down a whole bunch of rectangles that are in the right dimensions of the thumbnails, and then just slowly filling it out. Sometimes I'll even throw down the panel sizes before I even start putting details into them. So there you go. Make sure to lay it out on one big page so you can look at it all. Number three, make sure that you are varying up your panel size and shape. I'm definitely going to do a video about what decisions go into picking your panel size and shape, but the really important thing is to just make sure that you're not doing the exact same layout over and over again, unless that's something you're intending to do, obviously. But it's really important to vary up your panel layouts. It keeps things interesting. Each page is going to focus on a different idea that needs to be conveyed, so obviously the layout is going to be different. Don't constantly do panels of people's faces and never show their full bodies or anything else. That's not going to make a very dynamic layout. So make sure you are varying things up on every page. Keep things interesting. Don't do it arbitrarily, obviously. If it doesn't need to be strikingly different, that's totally okay. They don't all have to be super unique pages, but keep that in mind when you are designing your layouts. Number 4, when you're actually putting stuff into the panels, it's very important that you include characters, important background elements, speech bubbles, and you can even test out your colors in thumbnail form. The point of your thumbnails is to understand the composition, meaning the placement of objects and elements within your art. So if you don't include all those important elements, you might get to the end of your page once you've, gone through all your steps like inking and coloring and penciling and stuff, and discover that you didn't leave room for your speech bubbles. And how are you going to fit them in now? The artwork's already done. Where will they go? It's the worst. So make sure you're always accounting for all of the important elements that you will need on your page. Speech bubbles, sound effects if there's a really important sound effect, and obviously characters and background stuff. Things I include in my thumbnail sketches, I will usually do stick figures for my characters. I'll do like little emoji expressions if I want to keep a reminder of like, this is how they're going to be expressing. I will do just like simple little squares and circles for backgrounds and very quick kind of gestures for my thumbnails. Nothing too complicated, but I still try to include all the important elements as much as possible. And something I've done for 9point is when I was doing my thumbnails, I went and did colored versions of them all. Now, it wasn't super detailed coloring. I wasn't focusing on all the little details. It's just the major color palette. So, I put down, this is where a big swath of this color is going to go. This is where this color is going to go. I'd, put down all my color palettes so I could look at one scene and see like, okay, are all these colors consistent, etc. And number 5, my final tip, don't get too detailed. Like I said, my stuff is just stick figures and boxes. Thumbnails can take a long time because you might be sitting there thinking about what the heck you want to put on the page. That's usually what takes up the most of my time with these. There's lots of thinking and considering about where you're going to place things, but you shouldn't be putting hours into each layout, actually drawing it. Keep it to 20 minutes tops per page. You can always come back and redo them if they don't feel right after that amount of time. But yeah, you don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of each panel or illustration because it's just a waste of time at this stage. Don't spend forever coloring and rendering things. You're going to get to do that when you get into pencils. Just focus on the composition and your comic flow, and I will get into how to do that properly in future videos. Now, I feel like I promised a lot of stuff for future stuff, but they're coming up real soon, I swear. So for now, start drafting out your thumbnails if you're at that stage right now. If you learn something from my upcoming videos, then, you can always go back and make changes really easily because they're such quick little drawings. I love thumbnails. They're so great. It's also really cool when you have your thumbnails and you've drawn them all out. And you can just look at it and you can just see your whole comic in miniature. It's really cool. You're like, oh, this is an actual story. And it's really quick and it's really important because then later on, when you're going to be figuring out how the heck to draw all your characters and you have to focus on keeping them on model and making sure your art is nice and, drawing backgrounds and coloring stuff, all that, you're gonna have your layouts figured out so you don't have to sit there thinking about where everything is placed for a really long time. You just get to jump in and worry about the rest of it. So there you go. Thumbnails are great. Whew. Well, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Hi, Fido. My little puppy is here. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave any questions you might have in the comments, and make sure to subscribe if you want to learn more about the stuff I talked about, like comic flow. And I'll see you guys in a couple days. Goodbye!